To all distinguished guests, leaders, teachers, and students present, good evening, everyone. Today we gather here at the Music Hall of the School of Arts, Renmin University of China. We are here today for a themed event, and our topic today is a brief discussion on Buddhist art and the relationship between Eastern and Western cultural exchange. Today, we are truly honored to welcome Dean Fang of the School of Arts, Renmin University of China. Hello, Dean Fang. Welcome. We are also privileged to invite Director Zhang of the Buddhist Art Research Institute, Renmin University of China. Welcome. Before we begin the event, we would like to invite Dean Ding to our main stage to give remarks for today's event and introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, good evening. Buddhist art is a brilliant stream in the origins of Eastern art. It preserves culture and promotes exchange. Our great nation is moving towards a renaissance of culture and art, ushering in an era of return. So how can Buddhist art, as a vital part of Eastern civilization, play its rightful role in East-West cultural exchange? In the age of the internet economy, how can Buddhism use art to ease people's stress and harmonize minds? Today, we will explore Buddhist art here. And our keynote speaker today is from Larung Ga 5 Sciences Buddhist Academy in Ganzi, Sichuan, Great Khenpo Sodargye. He is currently one of the most influential Tibetan Buddhist masters and spiritual guides worldwide.
Today we have a special segment. I know that on September 25th this year, our School of Arts established the Chinese Buddhist Art Research Institute. The main work of this research institute is to make Buddhist art and academic research a central focus. Today, all the students, guests, and teachers present will witness a special moment. Dean Ding will present to Khenpo Sodargye the certificate of Honorary Research Fellow of the Chinese Buddhist Art Research Institute. We invite Khenpo Sodargye to the stage. Thank you. We are all enjoying this moment. We hope that in the future, Khenpo Sodargye will collaborate with professors and scholars at Renmin University to jointly explore Buddhist art and promote Buddhist culture, fostering the integration, promotion, revival, and preservation of Buddhist culture. Thank you. Now let us turn the time over to Khenpo Sodargye. Thank you.
First of all, my heartfelt gratitude to Dean Ding of the School of Arts, Renmin University, Director Zhang, and everyone else for awarding me this honorary certificate as an Art Research Fellow. I'm especially grateful and also very happy. Just now, we visited the School of Arts, the Buddhist Research Institute, the Oriental Art Research Institute, and the Buddhist Art Research Institute, as well as the Renaissance Research Institute, among others. This is truly meaningful. What makes me happy is that art should be indispensable for all humankind. But in today's era, so-called art has changed somewhat in many aspects. Therefore, it is very necessary for us to use Buddhism, traditional culture, the Renaissance, and other approaches to convey the positive energy of art so that many people can truly return to nature and to a state of inner tranquility. In this way, I think we will rediscover the true concept of art and the true values of art. Today, for me to speak on Buddhist art at the School of Arts may not be very fitting because I am not an art scholar, let alone an art professional or artist. So here, I can only say I am showing off my meager skills before the master. Also, just now, because I have recently been undergoing medical checkups at the hospital, I was under general anesthesia at noon today and just asked for leave to come here. Because of time constraints for this event, I still feel a bit lightheaded right now, as if I'm walking on clouds. So my thoughts today might be a bit fragmented. Maybe this is also a kind of performance art. In any case, I'd like to share some brief thoughts about Buddhist art and some ideas about the exchange between Eastern and Western cultures. I think so-called art truly requires a very tranquil, gentle state of mind. But nowadays, in the 21st century, whether Easterners or Westerners, everyone is moving extremely fast. Many people have no time to slow down. As a result, art may very likely face discontinuity. This is one concern. Also, I think no matter what kind of art, most art's origins or roots have a certain relationship with the world's religions. They are inseparable from religion. And I also feel that Buddhism plays a major role in this, especially whether in Tibet, in Han regions, or in our Eastern cultures, it should have its own special charm. At such times, we may also worry about the discontinuity of Buddhist art in the future. On this topic today, many young scholars and expert teachers perhaps not only know the current situation, but also recognize that whether it is a cultural renaissance or an artistic renaissance, we should shoulder our own responsibilities to some extent, and in some sense, we should all work together to save our era from the current crisis. From this perspective, I think art today may also face some crises in a certain sense due to the decline in people's hearts. As we all know, Western civilization is expanding, and in the process of global modernization, human society as a whole is undergoing tremendous changes. Especially in terms of material civilization, we have achieved brilliant results. But at the same time, we must also admit that it brings environmental degradation, various conflicts and contradictions in human society, including the collapse of individual mental health, and so on. As a result, our society now faces some rather severe challenges, or one could say a kind of crisis. I once read a statement from an international organization that said, humanity in the 21st century must either choose to come together globally to save the crisis and reverse the current crisis, or else we will all fall into a vicious cycle of environmental destruction and social disintegration. Actually, this statement, in some sense, is not hard for us to understand. Many people have very different attitudes toward ancient culture versus modern culture. There is a very distinct contrast in the degree of importance they place on them. The main reason, in my opinion, is that much of Western civilization brings both benefits and harms. What are the harms? Many people in the West advocate. What do they advocate? Individualism and anthropocentrism. Individualism means only caring about oneself, and through it, the binary oppositions in society of all kinds become very obvious. This everyone should also understand clearly. Many people in the East believe that when they have money and various capabilities, they send their children to study in the West. Actually, this is a good thing. On one hand, their horizons may be broadened. They learn more scientific and technological knowledge. But on the other hand, in much of Western culture, what they learn is centered on the individual. When they return, they may not be particularly filial to their parents. Originally, in Confucian thought, we have an education about filial piety to parents, but after children spend a long time in the West, what they learn is only the individual. They must forge a very strong will, but at such times, they will particularly neglect their friends and family, their parents, including even their own children. Under such a concept, there are both benefits and drawbacks. Because this personal doctrine is at odds with human society on some levels, it is not harmonious, not peaceful, and causes all kinds of conflicts. This involves not only social issues, family issues, but also personal emotional issues. Many Westerners' emotional patterns and their relationship patterns with parents after arriving here change dramatically. Perhaps many of your children go to the West happily and learn well, but as they study, after a period of time when they return, their mindset is completely, in some sense, influenced by various Western ideas. After this, will they be filial to you in the future? This is one of my concerns. The second issue is that what Western civilization mainly advocates now is anthropocentrism. At such times, they neglect our friends around us in the animal world. Sometimes I see that when human technology becomes more and more advanced, when people have money and power, they may eat all kinds of animal meat. Our mouths are actually the largest slaughterhouse for all kinds of animals, and our stomachs can be said to be the largest graveyard for. Who knows how many sentient beings' lives we have taken in this stomach during our lifetime, including our momentary oral cravings. This is a trampling on animals. Another thing is that for the benefit of humanity itself, we can say that now the destruction and damage to nature have reached an extreme degree. It can also be said that since ancient times, humanity has probably never been as severe as in our current era. There is a scientist named Scheller who said, "Our technology now is changing with each passing day. It should be said it is constantly developing, but this technology is still blind to humanity itself. It has not illuminated us." At the same time, humanity's own confusion has actually never existed before in history. It can be said to be unprecedented. So when we think about this, humanity's own confusion, the harms we cause to ourselves, I'm afraid we must also admit. At such times, perhaps our research in the arts, the true creation of works of art, may inevitably be affected in some ways. So many scholars also believe that perhaps this era is the best era because in human history there has never been such a dazzling array of various products displayed before us. But maybe our era is also the worst. It can be said to be a terminal era because human desire has never been as strong as in people of this current era. Now, the sense of satisfaction that each of us obtains is almost negligible. In this era, we may transform people's mentality through art, transform many people's behaviors. This is actually very necessary. Another thing I'd like to mention is that so-called art, everyone knows very clearly, it relies on an extremely subtle state of mind to be created. But I'm rather worried that people now are quite restless. Many people produce artistic products in a very short time, emphasizing efficiency more than quality. So for you who are doing art research, you definitely have good research in this area. In the places I've seen and been to, some young people truly treat art as their life. No matter what product they make, they use their life to make it, very joyfully. They have a kind of joy, a kind of happiness in their hearts as they work. But there are also some who think, no matter what, if I don't do this work, someone else will. And others have a kind of falseness, a manifestation of ugliness and evil. I'm afraid many people now also can't tell. After this, some people in a very short time produce numerous products, including cartoons, video games, movies, and television. Many are made in a very short time. In the process of making, the thought may be rather rough. For this reason, after these products come out, they don't last very long. We can see that many artworks now, from the 1980s and 1990s of the last century until now, continuously have never been forgotten in people's minds. Such artworks are not especially numerous. There are some, but not many. By comparison, with ancient culture, things left behind for hundreds, thousands, 10,000 years, they have been passed down and can be said to spread to all directions. Such products, up to now, still appear vividly before people's eyes, and their value never declines. What is the reason? Actually, I think many ancient people, no matter what kind of art they did, they had a particularly pure mind. They were very, very focused. When working with a focused mind, this should produce very good results. I've been to some places in Japan. They have some culture and art, including cooking or making any product. They completely treat it as a lifelong career. They do one thing for decades, and even if they can't finish it in this lifetime, they let others do it in the next life. Such works of art are often called craftsmanship spirit. There are various kinds. Compared with the works of many young people now, there really is a very, very big difference. So in this way, my second thought is this. You who do art all know this very clearly, but Buddhist art, it can be said in a certain sense, very much emphasizes adjusting our mindset, taming our own minds, purifying our intentions. In such a state of mind, to work, to make effort, the effects are completely different. You who are present should all know this. The world's great works all have religious backgrounds. The more prosperous religion is in a place, the richer the artworks are. Including going to Europe, whether it's Italy or France, etc., their works indeed have a great degree of meticulousness, different from some places. I went to Notre-Dame Cathedral in Paris. Notre-Dame Cathedral should be 600 or 700 years old by now. During its construction, there are different historical accounts, but actually, it took at least around 180 years to build. Perhaps none of our buildings would take that long. In my lifetime, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, if it really doesn't work, I can't wait. I have this habit too. When building temples at our Buddhist Institute, you must find a way to complete it within 2 years. If it can't be completed, I feel 3 years is too long. But some people's construction time is not like this, including the Leshan giant Buddha. Actually, it took 3 generations. I once wrote a Tibetan introduction about the Leshan giant Buddha. It took 3 generations. There was a master named Haitong. After he worked on it, it seems after the entire Buddha's head was completed, he passed away. Then his disciples continued, and then another person came. 3 generations of people to complete one entire Buddha statue. Now some projects, maybe within 5 or 6 years, no matter what, everyone just completes them perfunctorily. So modern people's restlessness is different from ancient people. But ancient people, they completely had a certain habit. But this habit, I think, has a certain relationship with religion, whether it's the works left behind in Mayan culture or ancient Greek civilization or India, Tibet or Han regions in China. Art with religious backgrounds in many places should be preserved for a very long time. When we go to some places, we can feel that behind these, there should be a very pure mind. This can be said to be history's gift to us. Just now, at the Buddhist Research Institute, many ideas and concepts of the Belt and Road, actually everyone is very clear about this. The Belt and Road is actually also called the Silk Road. The Silk Road, internationally, should be the largest commercial corridor. It's also a trade route, but at the same time, generation after generation of China's great monks passed through 65 countries. It was a journey from east to west to seek scriptures. That is to say, starting from Emperor Ming of Han, who dispatched many to seek scriptures in the west, continuing through the Tang dynasty and afterward, including, for example, Faxian, Zhuxixing, Zhu Falan, Tang Xuanzang, Kumarajva, etc., many of these great masters. They traveled back and forth seeking scriptures, a cultural journey, a cultural path. Through it, we can also see Buddhist culture transmitted from India to various countries, including present-day Myanmar, Cambodia, as well as Yunnan region, many countries. They have now become completely Buddhist nations where all people believe in the religion. So this culture, it can be said to be a cultural exchange and also an exchange of Buddhist thought. But behind it, there is such an invisible force. But this invisible force, perhaps many of you artists, can represent it as a kind of symbol to display to people. How should we originally understand Buddhist art? Actually, the 84,000 Dharma gates proclaimed by the Buddha are as vast as the ocean. If ordinary people want to understand directly, there is a certain degree of difficulty. So through the method of art, it can use a kind of written expression, or it can, in another way, including our current painting, display to us in many ways. But when displaying to us, ordinary people can also easily and completely understand the profound meaning within. Perhaps many of you present have also visited some temples. I think when you go to temples, actually temples should be called a paradise of art. It's not because I'm a monk that I'm praising this, but you can go and understand. First, when you see the temple, the environment where it's situated, for artists, it should be very longed for and admired, because after arriving, you may find birds singing, flowers fragrant, mountains green, waters beautiful. The entire nature brings you a special force. Arriving at the entire institute, seeing its resplendent golden roofs and Dharma banners, or its entire external architecture. Actually, it's a kind of architectural art. An architectural art, including in Han regions, including in Tibet in many places, after arriving there should be many things worth our seeking, flavors and feelings that now we probably cannot find at all. When you enter the Buddha hall, you may see individual, extremely exquisite and majestic Buddha statues. Actually, these exquisite and majestic Buddha statues, in some places, they represent different sculptures, different carvings, or they are sculptures, many different kinds. Some people see these Buddha statues very majestic, peaceful, dignified. At such times, some naturally shed tears. Some also have eyes brimming with tears, very devout. Some pray directly before the Buddha statues. Also, on the walls and doors of our temples, there are many diagrams of the 6 realms of samsara, various different Thangkas and paintings. These diagrams of the 6 realms are very exquisite, displaying to worldly people a principle of pursuing good and abandoning evil, naturally conveying this to you. Also, I sometimes think after you go to temples, especially in our Tibetan Buddhism, there are many monks chanting scriptures. When chanting scriptures, actually some chanting including in Han Buddhist temples, morning and evening services also have very good chanting. These chants, including your music academy and some rhythms and charms of music, they should all be completely applicable. When I was young, I learned a final auspicious verse. This auspicious verse, the teacher who taught me was very strict, but I couldn't learn it. It was just 4 sentences. But how to cadence, how to chant, this is it is completely compatible with much current art. And the symbols it marks are especially wonderful. Also, I don't know if you've seen in Tibetan Buddhism, there are some chants equivalent to having a kind of large ensemble striking musical instruments. Some strike drums, some strike cymbals, and blow conch shells with large and small many instruments used at the same time. If we change perspective, actually their requirements are very strict. It should be displaying a natural through sound to let the affliction, suffering, and various negative emotions in our minds be removed through this. This is also a method. It can also be said in this way from sound. So I'm thinking, first, many young people, when necessary in the future, should look at some things done in temples, although these are traditions of ancient people, but with some sounds and some charms in current society. Are there similarities? Everyone can also worthily observe. This is one aspect. Another aspect is I'd like to briefly introduce to everyone Tibetan Thangka paintings. Next, I'd like to briefly discuss what are called Thangkas in our Buddhist art. Just now, some scholars also mentioned that they previously may not have understood Tibetan Thangkas very well. Actually, Thangkas exist in Tibet, in Han regions, especially in Nepal, India, including in various countries now. All have different Thangkas. But in Thangka exhibitions and collections, there are relatively more from Tibet. So now, worldwide, in any museum we go to, there are large amounts, many Thangkas collected. So it's very necessary for everyone to also understand a bit about the value of Thangkas. So Thangkas, actually, if we trace back historically, previously, King Songtsen Gampo made what's called white Tara Thangka from his own nosebleed. This, in Tibetan history, is the earliest such Thangka. There is such an account. This account is also in relevant introductions about the Potala Palace, and also in the 5th Dalai Lama's book called Crystal Mirror. It's also mentioned in there. Since that time, Thangka painting throughout Tibet can be said to have become more and more prosperous in the world. So Thangkas, when painting them, may be somewhat different from some other paintings. The materials for painting them use gold, silver, agate, vermilion, including coral, turquoise, amber, the 7 precious substances as main materials, especially precious natural materials. Natural materials, in terms of formulation, there are very strict requirements. After formulation, they can be used, because many are pure natural materials. For this reason, after 10 years, 100 years, even thousands or tens of thousands of years, their colors never fade, including all their colors, continuing until now. For example, those painted 300 years, over 1,000 years ago, are still very good, very dazzling, colorful, especially beautiful. This is from the material aspect. Then, from the subject matter aspect, Thangkas have paintings of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and also so-called Dharma protectors, including our astronomy, geography, Tibetan medicine, Tibetan medical science, as well as the entire natural world. All these can be displayed through the method of painting. Now, so-called Thangkas have a special power within them. So who bestows this power? First is the creator, this painter. Painters generally, with our very restless state of mind, for example, making phone calls while doing things, chatting with others, doing art like this probably won't work. That is, being half-hearted or having an unstable state of mind. I once went to a place that paints Thangkas, but those young people didn't paint well. Each of them kept their mobile phones turned on beside them while painting. Then when a WeChat message came or something, they'd reply while also making phone calls. This kind of mentality doesn't produce successful paintings. I then went to another very strict Thangka school. At this Thangka school, except for Sundays, all mobile phones are completely collected. Everyone gets up in the morning to chant, and after finishing painting in the evening, they dedicate merit. Moreover, according to traditional strict methods of painting Thangkas, each painter must, for example, bathe and change clothes, receive precepts, not eat onions or garlic. There are many strict requirements. And at such times, oneself must visualize and paint with a very focused mind, because the creator's mind has infectious power. Many painters, as they paint, the blessings of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas merge into your mind. then at such times indeed, the paintings they finally produce have very strong infectious power on others with certain influence. After looking on the surface, it seems this is a painting, but actually within it, there is an invisible force. We also said before, painting has a kind of spirit and charm. Some have spirit but no charm. Some have charm but no technique. And it's very much related to the state of mind of the person painting the Thangka. That is to say, everyone often can also see actually much of the West's, whether oil paintings or other cartoons, look especially realistic, very authentic. But it seems after looking this kind of invisible feeling, sometimes I can't figure it out. I went to the British Museum. It has over 80 million various collections from different Eastern and Western parts of the world. But some of the Eastern ones within, especially many of our Eastern paintings and many Eastern works, indeed within them, what we Buddhists call blessing power, a kind of force, including when we see the Mogao Caves in Dunhuang. Inside the Mogao Caves treasure such a large amount, it should be said at that time, from several countries, including India and many surrounding countries. Works of different cultures are inside. Every mural inside, when displayed, actually some state of mind of the creators at that time can be seen. Previously, wasn't it Confucius's teacher who asked him to paint? After he painted for a while, this teacher said, "It's okay now." Then he said, "No, I haven't found its spirit yet." Then after a while, he said, "Now you found the spirit, you can stop now." He said, "I still can't. I haven't found the technique yet." Then after a while, he said, "You've now found the technique. You can stop now." He said, "No, I don't know the author's thought yet." Finally, after another period, he said, "I've now discovered that the author of this painting is probably King Wen of Zhou. He was of tall and sturdy build, such and such characteristics, etc." He described it. Later, his teacher was very pleased, saying, "Indeed it is so. There was such history at that time. I think many of our current painters actually indeed paint with their lives." And very deeply penetrating people's hearts, extremely meticulous. Through such a particularly pure state, the paintings, painted or carved works, or any such creation should be, if future generations after 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years leave these behind, it should be said they are very valuable with power. So every time we see some Thangkas, including yesterday, I saw someone a while ago when we had an exhibition at our Grand Theatre. There was a Thangka by someone named Namkha Jie, paintings of Shakyamuni Buddha and Tara. After I saw it, I myself also, especially like Thangkas, and also like other Buddha statues, I often commission Buddha statues with very high standards. One requirement is that its proportions and measurements must be standard and also painted especially majestically. Only if it's like this can it be reproduced, can many be made meaningful to others and meaningful to oneself. So among those present today, perhaps some are interested in Buddhism and have faith, some don't. But regardless, we can treat it as a kind of artwork. So for this artwork, besides the work itself, does it have a kind of expressive power? There should be its creative thought, the invisible power behind it. If it doesn't have this, if it's completely modernized, then it's probably not very reasonable. Previously, there was someone named Liang Sicheng, also a very remarkable modern historian. His thought was, he felt that including at that time many in Beijing with ancient architectural characteristics, throughout his life he always wanted to protect them, but later many of his wishes were not realized. Looking at it now, it's indeed very regrettable. Now in our major cities, it seems every building is like stacked bricks, no special characteristics. Like before, Jiangnan had Jiangnan style, Northeast had Northeast style, Beijing had Beijing style. Many ancient buildings were very worthy of commemoration. And recalling history, one could say they are endlessly memorable, thought-provoking. But now indeed, in this aspect, much has been lost. What did Liang Sicheng say at that time? He once saw what seemed to be from the Song dynasty, an image of Avalokiteshvara. This Avalokiteshvara image, later, some painters painted it as a beautiful woman, perhaps now in a graceful, very beautiful form of a beautiful woman. Avalokiteshvara, later, he felt if Buddhist artwork has been painted like this, this is the path of demons. He called it the path of demons, including now many people with modern academic thought take original Buddha images and sometimes express them through cartoons or artistic methods as such people that modern people especially like. But in this case, sometimes it seems many people may find it relatively attractive, but actually, besides the superficial form, its connotation, that is, its inner meaning, seems unable to be expressed. So as a painter, I think, whether being a painter or doing other art, actually having thoughtful connotation, having rich inner meaning, this is very important. If you have this, then the works they produce at one glance are immediately clear. Within it is a kind of profundity. Some may be inexpressible in words, but actually it truly has something that especially shakes oneself, shakes others. After looking, there truly is a kind of power that touches the heart. This is the value of art. Only it has lasting vitality. I think, including Thangkas now, there are some who study modern art. Some of them, I see many Thangkas done in modern style, but I don't know on your side what kind there are. I'm not particularly clear. But if there is no special secret intent, it seems sometimes we should respect some ancient thoughts, especially for some Buddhist specializations, should have knowledge with Buddhist specialization. Only then is it okay. Otherwise, we film now, perhaps now it's slightly better, probably in the 1970s and 1980s of last century, many films featured Buddhist figures or Buddhist images, all appearing in a kind of nondescript way. From our Buddhist perspective, this is completely desecrating or corrupting Buddha's spirit. For example, when a person is at their wit's end, they go to ordain, there's no other way. And the so-called ordained person is dressed in rags. If dressed relatively cleanly, they're not a proper Buddhist. Or Buddha images, I once saw in some exhibition, somewhere in the end, Buddha's eyes were destroyed through other means. This is called an artistic display. Also, some in cartoons have Buddha wearing high heels, wearing black glasses, etc., all kinds of things. In this case, if we want to research any artistic product, actually, it's been said before. Art originates from humanity, but art transcends humanity. It can be said, if it has a transcendent thought, it's called art. If not, what? Now, so-called some performance art. The other day, there was someone from abroad who for 12 days walked naked among the public. Many young people especially liked, wow, this is true performance art. She's amazing. Every day sleeping with a skeleton. This is very powerful. Actually, these, I think, modern people's ideas are all kinds. Perhaps some people are interested, but true art has a very profound thought. Generally, we ordinary people cannot express it in words, cannot express it with our actions. But through art or through a method, we can immediately achieve great awakening, feeling endlessly reflective. Such power art actually does have. So art and religion should be a method of transcendent human thought. In this, humanity can find many, many things they themselves cannot obtain. For example, if a person's mind is very restless, through an artist's music, after playing, the mind completely has a kind of enlightenment, purity. If our minds are very restless, they see a painting, slowly contemplate, then the mind calms down. At such times, all original afflictions and suffering can all vanish into thin air. If this kind of method can be displayed, then this is the best kind of art. This is one aspect. Another aspect I'd like to mention, our Buddhist art actually doesn't only emphasize truth, goodness, and beauty. In the end, it will also return to nature, no matter how beautiful, no matter how pleasant sounding, no matter how melodious. Actually, in the end, besides impermanence and emptiness, there is nothing. So this is our general sand mandala, that is a sand painting mandala. Actually, to make it takes several days, using various colors of cinnabar, together piling drawing lines. Very complex, especially beautiful. You perhaps have never seen it. To make it takes a very long time. It has many, many symbolic meanings. But after all the rituals and all the ceremonies are completed, with a brush, it's all collected back. Finally, the sand is also thrown into the river, not even a trace, vanished without a trace. What does this represent? Actually, the truth of all phenomena, no matter how good, ultimately still returns to nature. It doesn't have something worthy of making us especially envious. We also know, since ancient times, how many artists have, over thousands and millions of years, benefited tens of thousands of people, but up to now, ultimately still cannot escape the net of impermanence. The nature of all phenomena is actually completely empty. This is the highest realm. This point in Buddhism may not necessarily be the same as some current art. Many people of East-West cultures, according to their own abilities, begin to recognize the self. I saw before, generally ancient Greeks in each of their temples all had a particularly famous maxim, know thyself. When you want to know yourself, most people think, if you want to know yourself, what kind of person am I? I'm a soldier, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher. They think it's like this. But actually, recognizing one's nature, according to our Buddhist view, recognizing one's nature, what am I really? Am I a temporary combination of the 5 skandhas or what? So ultimately, Buddhism's true art is returning to nature, transmitting such a kind of power. This point, perhaps whether practice or ultimately art, all have such a return. On this point, everyone perhaps also needs to reflect. Finally, I also especially hope that many of our artists and students studying art especially hope in the future. To have a lineage is very important. First, what kind of teacher do you have? In the future, you should transmit artistic knowledge to posterity. Some teachers are very unsuccessful. No students. When you leave, your knowledge has already, it can be said, in this world, in the human realm, has disappeared. So it's very necessary for us now. The style of traditional art should continue unbroken. People we can leave. But our knowledge can be held in the hands of this generation. We have a responsibility to continuously continue the cultural transmission of art. This is a responsibility for every person, every student. And their purpose is to cultivate people. Actually, previously, a German writer named Orff said, our music, actually, he was a musician. Music education, music is merely a means. The ultimate purpose is to educate people. Whether we sing or paint, any artistic product, actually, it's a tool, it's a means. But truly, it's to cultivate people. To cultivate people cannot break the lineage. If there's no lineage, then our art is just a tool for ourselves to make money, for ourselves to become famous, to gain some official position. In that case, actually, this kind of goal is very narrow. We don't praise this. Every person must bear this responsibility, continuously transmitting true artistic thought to the next generation and the next. In this way, in human history, there will be an eternal way to continuously preserve especially precious artistic culture. This is one aspect. Another aspect is we also especially need to respect predecessors' styles handed down by artists, their traditions, their thoughts, the deep essence of their culture. This kind of essence, we have a responsibility not to let it break. We, through another method, because some people don't understand themselves. Some art now is very strange. They themselves like greed, hatred, and delusion. Then make art also greed, hatred, and delusion. Some use blood, gore, exposure, violence, or some horror to propagate in this way. Actually, in this case, it brings many very bad negative impacts to humanity. Now, some works, after being displayed to the world, have ruined how many people, cultivated many bad people. Such art, I feel in this world, doesn't have very good value, although perhaps you, through this method. Now people especially like those who attract eyeballs, but perhaps such thoughts left in the human realm, spread to the human realm, won't bring others a kind of good force. Even to our society and humanity, bring very bad destructive harm. The Creator also has direct responsibility. So in the process of our operation, we must, toward our environment, toward human thought, including toward our animals, they also have precious value of life. To have behavior responsible to them, this is very important. I finally say one thing. So-called art perhaps needs a kind of talent, also needs what modern people call technique. Previously, it was art. Now, in some sense, it's also called a kind of technique. But actually, most importantly, we still need our own inner mind. If our inner mind is especially pure, any product they create will perhaps be very, very meaningful. Of course, now, our market audience, some are relatively restless. They may not be interested in products with connotation, with spirit. On the contrary, toward things that corrupt our morality or have negative impact on thought, some of them may be interested. But this also will not be based on truth. Therefore, our Buddhism also especially emphasizes what? Emphasizes its correctness and authenticity. Art, although its modes of expression are different, all kinds, but when truly returning to its thought, it needs to have a correct guidance and correct direction. This is perhaps very important. Of course, in this way, actually, some differences in East-West cultures themselves exist. But from Buddhist culture's perspective, the differences between East-West cultures aren't very great. Buddhism temporarily tells everyone birth, old age, sickness, and death, or end-of-life care, returning to nature. Such a mentality. Ultimately, every sentient being in the future can all awaken such a mentality. From this point, I think Buddhist art between East and West has no difference. Of course, from the perspective of historical origins, actually the West doesn't have a very long Buddhist history. So now in the West, no matter which country one goes to, very ancient Buddhist artistic products are basically not worth mentioning. No matter which country, some other religious histories and backgrounds should be findable. Regardless, I think those present can all perhaps rely on a kind of pure mind, one's own kind of joyful mind toward one's own profession, have a kind of love, passion. At the same time, every one of us, no matter what we do, should think of helping people around us and other life around us. In that case, this kind of intention and under such a mentality, everything done should be beneficial to both self and others. All right, that's all I'll say.